Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Tonic Accord podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about what a lot of presidents do in their lame duck sessions in their presidency, which is pardons and pardoning friends, associates, people they believe that were treated unjustly. But we're going to get into, what is a presidential pardon? What is the history behind it? Why is it enshrined in our Constitution? And how have presidents used it in the past, whether controversially or not? So yeah, Alex, how do you feel about this? Obviously, now the reason we're talking about this is Donald Trump is in his lame duck period of his presidency, and he's pardoned people like Roger Stone and Michael Flynn, which has been somewhat controversial. How do you see the power of a presidential pardon historically and in a modern context?
Yeah, so I feel like for a lame duck session, this has been anything but lame and anything but boring. You know what I mean? Like this last month and a half has been almost as nuts as like the lead up to the election.
True.
But yeah, my initial takeaway with pardoning actually being put in to the Constitution and agreed on by our founding fathers is kind of mind blowing to me because it's quite a task to give to a leader, especially when the founding fathers were hesitant of authority and hesitant of monarchy. So I'm somewhat surprised actually that it ended up making it into there because for the historical context of it, there was something that was based on the royal prerogative of English kings, which is kind of the predecessor to pardons. And it was a very English monarchy type of decision. Like it was like monarchies, especially King George, I think it was the first, and then King Charles the second, were both like super known for just pardoning friends or pardoning people for political purposes. And so it was fascinating to me that pardoning actually snuck into the Constitution. And so the interesting thing, though, is that when the founding fathers were actually developing the laws for the Constitution, they didn't even discuss the pardoning power till very late in the game. Like it didn't even make it to the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan for the Constitution. But it was Alexander Hamilton who talked about how during a time of potentially political chaos or turmoil, the president needs a way to almost solve irreconcilable issues, something that can't be solved through just the normal political means. And so kind of my takeaway is that the pardoning power over the years has changed quite a lot, but its original intent was actually just to sometimes be used to unify a fragile nation. And the first time it was used was when in Pennsylvania, and I think it was 1790 something, there was the Whiskey Rebellion, which was a huge kind of insurgence against big government and taxes. And George Washington pardoned these people because he recognized that it was for the better of the country. Right. And another really important one, I think, was when Andrew Johnson pardoned the Confederacy. On paper, you'd be like, what the hell? Why are you doing that? But then at the end of the day, it's like, how does a country move forward if we recognize these people as criminals? So I think in the context of it, it was super fascinating to me that this made it. But then they also did clarify as well, because it was Madison actually who basically argued to put impeachment as well into the Constitution after that as a way to then check the president for getting too corrupt. And so it seems interesting to me where impeaching is almost like the counterbalance to pardoning.
Right.
So yeah, I think pardoning is good most of the time, but lately it's become much more political, probably starting mostly with Nixon. But you said some interesting stuff, so it looks like it was earlier. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had the similar reaction to you, where when I looked at the history, and like you said, I mean, the roots of a presidential pardon comes from kingly powers. It was pretty fascinating that the founding fathers were so willing to allow this in. Yes, William Randolph Hearst's daughter was pardoned. Yes, that is a big one. Yeah, Patty Hearst, who was, taken up into this terrorist wing in the 60s, 70s.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think it was Jimmy Carter ended up eventually pardoning Patty Hearst because of her actions. That was actually a controversial one. A less controversial, but historically now looked upon well, I think, is Jimmy Carter also pardoned those who dodged the Vietnam draft. Again, this was something that Vietnam had caused such a rift in American politics that Carter felt that, people that were wrapped up in this and drafted in Vietnam, that felt it was unjust to go to war, and like left the left to Canada or dodged a draft, lying or one way or another. Carter thought it would be better for the nation to heal if those people were not prosecuted as draft dodgers but pardoned, right? You mentioned, right, the Civil War, again, a huge, the biggest rift in American history. All the Confederate soldiers as well as Union soldiers that also abandoned, like, what's it called? When you abandon the military, what's that word?
Desertion.
Called? Desertion. Yes. Oh, yes. So it was Confederacy and Union deserters were pardoned, which is crazy, right? But I think those are the examples of, I think, what the founding fathers' original intention was, which is, like you said, like a moment where a president who is intellectual and respected and honored can use that power to try and heal a nation and bring together in instances where there was a lot of divide. And again, the checks and balances, like you said, was impeachment. And of course, the president can't pardon himself of impeachment. And as well as pardoning is, again, defined as, crimes against the United States, which is federal crimes. So a pardon cannot apply to someone who has a state crime. And the reason I'm talking about this is, a lot of the discussion today around pardons is, can Trump pardon himself for something like a crime against the state of New York? Or can he pardon someone like Brian and Richie mentioned in the chat, Rudy Giuliani, for a state crime versus a federal crime, right? He can't. You can't pardon something for a state crime. It's only on the federal level. So there are checks and balances to the pardoning system, but there also is kind of territory that we're getting into where we really haven't no precedent. And one of that is, which was mentioned earlier this year by Trump, is the ability to pardon himself. Trump claims that even though he has no reason to, this is before impeachment, that he does withhold the right to pardon himself. A lot of legal scholars and constitutional experts disagree with that, because a pardon would still, it means that he would be acting as his own judge in his own case, and that's not necessarily what a pardon is.
Yeah, and I want to take a step back really quickly before we keep moving.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to talk about how how the founding fathers and then our lawmakers, even up to the late 1800s, viewed the pardon, because there was an 1893 law which gave the power to review and recommend pardons to the Department of Justice. And then again in 1981, there was another law which created the Office of the Pardon Attorney. So from what I've kind of gathered is that the office, which is a part of the Department of Justice, is actually probably more informed than the president on the background of this person or potential pardon candidates. And so they actually would put out recommendations. But starting with Bill Clinton in the late 90s, he showed the system that you're not obligated to abide by these recommendations, and you don't need to work with this office to actually pardon.
Yeah.
Because he pardoned Mark Rich, who was an international commodities trader, hedge fund manager, financier, and businessman. I believe he had some federal charges of tax evasion and making oil deals with Iran during the hostage crisis. So not a great look. But again, that was I think the first time where there was this kind of gray area where who can you pardon? Is it solely the president's decision? What can happen?
Well,
and now, go.
I don't know if that was the first time. I mean, there's been controversial pardons for a while.
But it was the first time since that law, or the 1981 law that actually established this office to work with the president.
Okay, I understand you. Okay, I get you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I believe, Donald Trump is not in a league of his own. There's, like you said, Bill Clinton, he pardoned his own half brother for a cocaine charge. That was incredibly unpopular, and basically considered nepotism, right? And it is. I don't think he should have done that. I think that was bad. I mean, now, if you look at the details, his brother had already served the time for that charge. It was like he got pardoned after the fact. Which is, if you're comparing, that would be a different thing than pardoning someone before they've served their time or during, aka Rob Blagojevich. But I still don't think that was right. H.W. Bush pardoned people that were involved in the Iran-Contra scandal. Brian and Richie mentioned, Carter pardoned Patty Hearst. Not a lot of people were fans of that. And of course, the biggest one was, the pardoning of Richard Nixon. That justification was used as, this is, Gerald Ford said this was to heal the country and to bring people together, and we don't want to drag a trial of our president into the public sphere and have embarrass our country into to the world stage. That was kind of his justification. Well, it was still incredibly unpopular that he pardoned Nixon at the time. I mean, people really hated that fact. They wanted him to burn. So, I think that it's so the idea that Trump pardoning people that are unpopular is nothing new. It's certainly a common, a thing that comes up again and again, of presidential pardons that piss a lot of people off for different reasons. And the amount of people that and I also think I think that is where people get upset with pardons, because I think we've established that pardoning is a part of our constitutional, democracy, and for whatever reason it is used to heal the country sometimes. But who you pardon and why is very important. Barack Obama has, I think, the record for most pardons of any president, but a lot of those, thousands of them actually, were nonviolent drug offenders. That were caught up in drug charges on the federal level. That's who he pardoned, along with Chelsea Manning and stuff. Whereas Trump has decided to pardon people like Joe Arpaio, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, those who have been, criminally charged with lying to the government, if you're Flynn or Stone, or lying to the FBI, or Joe Arpaio for, what was his thing? I mean, I know that he had terrible things where he had internment camps and torture on immigrants, but I forget what exactly he was convicted for.
I don't remember either. I also though I was like, why the heck are they pardoning this guy? Okay, so let's get into Trump pardoning himself, because it's actually interesting. George Mason, who is one of the founding fathers, he was actually deeply troubled by pardoning being put into the Constitution.
Right.
Because he's like, okay, well, we're using George Washington as our standard. He's like, we're probably never going to have someone as of high character as George Washington. And he's like, so what happens when a president could come along eventually who would try to change our form of government? And I'm going to use a metaphor for this, and please stop me if it if it gets too off the wall. But I bought a sauna recently, right? And there's instructions on how to set up the sauna. You don't read the instructions every time you get in the sauna, but you pretty much had to read the instructions to set it up. And so you're always going in there kind of with the understanding of those instructions as kind of a baseline for what you're going to work around once you're in the sauna. Or let's say PlayStation, it comes with an instruction manual, but you don't read the instruction manual every time you use it.
Right.
But it's, if there's an understanding of that you're operating under the rules of how this thing was developed. And I think that's how the Constitution is that it's an instruction manual. It doesn't need to always be taken literally or, used as something that is just crucial and the panacea for everything, but it's the instruction manual. But that requires everyone that is operating inside of our United States to at least have a basic understanding of that instruction manual and to at least be operating under the terms that are in that manual. And I think the problem with Trump is that he's shown us that if it's not specifically written in the instruction manual, he is going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons, the election, everything else that we could talk about with him. But the worrying thing is that I was reading about it today. It seems like he can't pardon himself, but it's really never been discussed. And he does have more powers than people would think in pardoning. So, but then again, you can't be your own jury, right? And so it gets really convoluted. So I don't think he can pardon himself, but I honestly don't know if anyone in the United States is ready to make that decision. Maybe the Supreme Court, but I don't even know because it's so unprecedented. But again, like you mentioned earlier, it's not federal crimes that he would have issues with. It's the Southern District of New York. So that voids it anyways. So I almost think him pardoning himself is kind of a moot point. Maybe pardoning his family, Rudy Giuliani, which Brian mentioned here. And, I don't know. It's just interesting is that it's almost like we're going to have to add something to the Constitution, amendments or something, just because Trump is challenging things we never thought we had to write down.
I think the idea, at this point, I don't think Trump even needs to pardon himself. There's nothing to pardon for, right? There's no federal charges against him. There are state level investigations that are, believe me, they're going for it. In the state of New York specifically. He wouldn't even need to pardon himself for anything. I think that's that weird thing is when he was tweeting about pardoning himself, I'm looking at the tweet now. It's June 4th, 2018. This is like, talk of Russia and investigations and all this stuff, and treason, right? All that has kind of passed now. I think now it would be, like, I think it would be his family members with like campaign finance stuff and like security clearance issues and all of that. I think that'll all come to fruition after he's out of office. Like, I think that there will be investigations into Trump's family when the Biden administration takes office, because I don't think the Biden administration will let everyone just go lightly if they engaged in like campaign finance fraud and like benefit and profiting off of the presidency, which is, there's a lot of allegations and claims that they've been doing that. I mean, if you look at Ivanka, she like promoted her own makeup brand using the White House account, like, and so I think that's the stuff that you would need a pardon for. But if it's not like being investigated now, Trump doesn't have the right to pardon after January. Like, he has to either do it now or it's done. And I don't really know how he would like can you pre-pardon someone? Like, can you like, if anything happens, he's pardoned? I don't know if you can do that either. So it's almost this weird thing where it's like your kids have to be in trouble sooner so that you can pardon them sooner. Otherwise, they're going to get in trouble in like March or April and it's too late to pardon them.
Yes, exactly. And again, a pardon is an admission of guilt. So yeah. Like, that's where I don't know if he's going to be able to pardon, say, Jared Kushner, because there's not a lot of transparency out there right now about what investigations are happening, how serious they are. Are they I mean, there is a federal investigation, but does it have a lot of leads? Could it actually lead to this? I don't know. And you're right. Like, it's by the time he's like, what does he have, about a month? More or less,
a month and a week or something.
Like by the time he could actually pardon someone, it might be too late. Though, again, I don't know if the things people around him have done have all been illegal, because that goes back to the point of like, some of these things were just not written. Like, right. I did a catching up a few weeks ago about how Jared Kushner and Trump both made $3 to $4 million off of the first PPP, stimulus bill. And that's not illegal. It's morally abhorrent and politically suicide if that information got out sooner, but it's not illegal. And I feel like there's a lot of things like that where they weren't written. And so I don't really know. And Brian said Giuliani is getting pardoned for sure. I don't know, because that means that Giuliani would be admitting guilt. Right. And I mean, yeah, he's sweating out of every orifice and passing wind on the air, but he still hasn't been convicted or even as far as I know, there's not any like substantial things going on that could actually be worth it. Right. And so I don't know. Like, I think my takeaway is that the media is freaking out about these pardons, but I don't know if he's going to pardon that many people, because like you said, it's almost like too late and there's not enough evidence and it's too little.
Well, yeah. He's historically, Trump has actually pardoned not that many people. He's not commuted many sentences. He hasn't pardoned many people at all, but he still has some time. And I don't think he'll pardon himself again. Like, it's like there's nothing to pardon at this point. But Obama pardoned thousands of people in his last few weeks. Bill Clinton did a bunch of people in his last day. Right? People do pardons in their last hours of office. So, Donald Trump could come out and just start pardoning his buddies left and right, whoever they are. I mean, again, let's be real. He already has. He's already pardoned Roger Stone and Michael Flynn, who were his political operatives on part of his campaign, who were convicted of lying to the federal government. And so, again, that was not, Michael Flynn's was not to heal the nation. Roger Stone was not to heal the nation. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I think that the nation would have healed better if Roger Stone, stayed in prison forever. That guy's a villain. He looks like a Batman villain. So those are the two pardons recently that I think got a lot of attention. And then the talk around his family is what's like the scholars are kind of trying to figure out. We'll see what he does, but his track record for pardons is mostly political friends, and I think that's the big legacy, right? Barack Obama was people that Barack Obama personally felt were treated unjustly by the system. A lot of drug offenders, Chelsea Manning with her sharing of government information. Um, um, Bill Clinton was criticized because it was a lot of his buddies and friends. And I think Donald Trump is in the same boat where I think one of his pardons was like a drug offender that was because of Kim Kardashian lobbying him to do it. And that one was like, that's probably political because he got he got a win. He got a thumbs up from Kim K. So I don't know. I think that he's going to pardon the Aryan Brotherhood to build his army. Good joke. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's funny. But I could see him pardoning. Who else was Rod Blagojevich? That's so. He also pardoned Rod Blagojevich.
That one was
that's
disgusting.
Super weird.
Like no reason. That's bipartisan corruption because he was a Democrat, right?
Yeah, he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat from Chicago. It's because his wife pleaded to him, and then since then, I mean, they've talked about how Trump is different. So that was a weird one. I wonder if they were just buddies. I wonder if they were just friends.
Yeah, and there is one actually because we were talking. Trump did posthumously pardon Jack Johnson, which I actually liked too. He was the former boxer who I believe had a criminal conviction from 1913.
Oh, right.
That was abhorrent today. It was something involving transporting a white woman across state or something.
Yeah, it was driving with a white woman in a car across state lines. It's like, oh my god.
Exactly. Okay. Here's a question. So, what do you think about Snowden? Do you think Trump could pardon Snowden before this? Do you think he would? Because that to me would actually be a more reasonable pardon. I don't know your thoughts. But...
I mean, I'd love to see it. I don't think Donald Trump would do it. I'm trying to think why Donald Trump would do something like that. I mean, is maybe just I don't know. I don't see any motivation for him to doing that. I would love to see it. I would love to see anyone pardon Edward Snowden. I think that guy exposed part of our government that needed to be exposed, and it created a discussion around personal data and security and how much freedom are we willing to give up for national security. All that, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole different podcast. But I would love to see him pardon Snowden. Is there talk of that? Has he said anything about?
He's kind of like half-assed mentioned it over the years, and I know Fox News talks about it. I think a lot of people other than Trump keep implying it because Trump has always, I feel like if he was going to pardon a political official like that, it would be Snowden, just because he exposed not the deep state or anything, but him and Trump are both would share that idea that there's a lot of nefarious activity in the intelligence community. But again, you're right. I don't know why he would do it at this point, but it's funny, man. Every time I watch Rogan and he has on Snowden, I'm just like, this guy shouldn't be hiding in Russia right now.
No.
But again, I think your best point is that Trump hasn't actually pardoned that much. Jimmy Carter was like 560 something, and Reagan 400 and something, and
Obama
Clinton
in the thousands.
Yeah, oh God, and Trump really hasn't, but there is a trend. It's loyalty, and again, I mean that is kind of Trump 101. Is he wants loyalty over good governance over politics, and it's the same with the pardons. So I would not be surprised if he pardoned more people. I mean, I'm pissed off that he pardoned Michael Flynn, because what's the first thing Michael Flynn does? He gets out and then calls for martial law to overturn the election. I'm like, yeah, that's a guy that we really want on our streets.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a trend there. I could maybe see Trump pardoning like a Jared Kushner or a Giuliani, but again, we would need the step that they would be admitting guilt at that point as well.
Yeah, and we're not there yet. And to wrap it up, basically, like, it seems like Donald Trump, like you said, is going off loyalty. He's not pardoning for this notion of healing the country, and also like. He joins a decent list of other presidents that have pardoned their buddies, including Bill Clinton, H.W. Bush, Reagan, Carter. I mean, everybody. But it doesn't make it good, and it is interesting to look in, like, why do we have pardons? What are they supposed to be used for, and what are they actually used for? And in my opinion, this is an example of pardoning's gone too far. Roger Stone and Michael Flynn should not be pardoned, in my opinion. But you could have an opinion of yourself at home. Do you think that presidential pardons should remain enshrined in our Constitution? Is it a valuable asset for a leader of a free world to have to heal the nation, or is it mostly used for political favors and helping out your buddies that maybe took the fall? It could go either way, but we want to hear your opinions. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion on pardoning. This comes up anytime there's a president in the lame duck period, when they do the most pardoning. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. So you can catch us at the Tonic Accord, at Podbean, YouTube. We're live right now on Twitch. And thanks for those watching live. Yeah, on Twitch. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.